Welcome back to the channel. Glad you could join me. Today we're going to be talking about Mississippi, the Magnolia state. So let's move on to the facts about Mississippi. So Mississippi was granted statehood December 10th, 1817, making it the 20th state to join the Union. The capital of Mississippi is Jackson. The population is 2.9 million. It is the 35th most populous state. In area, it is 48,430 square miles, which is roughly 125,443 kilometers squared. And it is the 32nd largest state in size. The four largest cities in Mississippi are Jackson, Gulfport, Southaven, and Biloxi. Moving on to the history of Mississippi. So Mississippi was first explored, and some of the mapping was done by the Spanish in 1540. They didn't really settle the area at all. It wasn't until 1699 when the French moved into the area and started their colonization efforts that we had more colonies, or more expansion, I should say, into the area. You can see here we have Natchez, which seems very much like a Spanish name to me, but it was first settled by the French in 1716. So in 1763, which was after the French and Indian War, Mississippi became part of the British Empire, and then following the American Revolution in 1776. So that territory was then officially ceded to the United States as part of the Treaty of Paris in 1783. So it went through a couple hands, and then it achieved statehood in 1817, making it the 20th state to join the Union. The area was highly agricultural at the time. It was heavily reliant on the cotton production, which was quite common for the southern United States at that point in history. And Mississippi did have quite a large part in the American Civil War, which lasted from 1861 to 1865, and it was definitely a Confederate state. Let's see. Did make some notes here. I'm trying to find them. Because Mississippi has quite a history with the Civil War. Here we go. So Mississippi, as I said before, it played a not insignificant role in the Civil War between the states. So Mississippi seceded from the Union January 9th, 1861. It became the second state to secede. South Carolina was the first. They had a number of battles that took place in Mississippi. Battle of Corinth in 1862, the Battle of Iuka. I'm not entirely sure if that's how you say that. Vicksburg was located there on the Mississippi River, and it was a crucial turning point in the Civil War. And so it was, I shouldn't say crucial turning point, it was an important point of contention between the North and South. And so the siege of Vicksburg became a turning point because Vicksburg was so important to the war effort for both the North and the South. The siege lasted from May to July of 1863, and General Ulysses S. Grant, who later became President of the United States, fought on the fought for the Union Army. He was the one that was in charge of the siege, and the city eventually surrendered. Confederate General John C. Pemberton was the commander of the Confederate forces at the time. They surrendered July 4th, 1863, which is coincidental, but aptly coincidental. Because Vicksburg was taken by the Northern forces, it became a strong point, or it basically gave the North control over the Mississippi River, and it split the Confederacy at that point in time. So the Confederacy was split on both sides, east and west of the Mississippi, and because the North now had control over the Mississippi River, it was very hard for Confederates on the west side of the Mississippi River to support the efforts on the east and vice versa. So it really, really hurt the war effort in the South, and made it much more likely that the victor in the Civil War would end up being the North, which did happen. There were thousands of people from Mississippi, often called Mississippians. They served in the Confederate Army. They raised a lot of regiments from the South, and there were Mississippi regiments at the Battle of Shiloh, the Battle of Antietam, the Battle of Gettysburg, the Battle of Chickamauga. Some of the Confederate generals from Mississippi were Earl Van Dorn, William Barksdale, and Stephen D. Lee, not the Robert E. Lee of Confederate Army fame. There was a lot of destruction, too, that occurred in Mississippi at that point in time. There were guerrilla bands. There were both of the armies, the Union and the Confederacy, and so there ended up being a lot of reconstruction after the war. An interesting note, there was a group of guerrilla fighters in Mississippi called Knight Company. They were led by a man named Newton Knight, and they actually were Union sympathizers that regularly engaged in warfare against the Confederate forces. So there was quite a resistance movement at the time there, which I thought was interesting. For the Civil War, it seems from the outside that you had the southern states and the northern states, and all the North was for the North, all the South was for the South. But in this case, there were guerrilla bands that engaged in that type of warfare against the Confederate Army, even in the confines of the South itself. So then we get back to the Civil Rights era and the Reconstruction afterwards. The South was very much segregated until the 1950s, 1960s. So even though slavery was abolished, there was a lot of anti-integration and pro-segregation that sentiment, feeling, laws, all that stuff. Jim Crow was the order of the day from basically the Civil War, which was the 1860s, until 100 years later in the 1960s. So the Ku Klux Klan was particularly strong in Mississippi and the South during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Then you have the events like the murder of Emmett Till, Freedom Summer of 1964, and fortunately for everyone involved, those efforts to deny people the right to vote and basic equality between the races, those failed, and we were able to move forward. Then we have the modern era. So the state has been diversifying its economy. Part of the reason that the South had such a hard time because during the Civil War was because it was a very much agricultural society, and it didn't have access to the manufacturing resources that the North had. So they diversified their economy, branching out from agriculture into other areas, and we'll get into that in detail later. So the geography and climate of Mississippi. Mississippi is kind of divided into these 5 regions geographically. So we have the Gulf region, which is like the coastline, the Gulf Islands. The coastline is not very long in Mississippi. If you remember back to that previous map that I showed, their coastline is 44 miles or 71 kilometers long. That's all they have. Obviously, we have states that are completely landlocked that have no coastline, but it's right there on the Gulf of Mexico. But because of the shape of like Louisiana, if I remember right, it comes over, and so their coastline is very much short. They have a vast river system in Mississippi, Mississippi being named for the Mississippi River, or being named because of the Mississippi River. And so there's a lot of tributaries and things that flow into the Mississippi, which flows right past the state. You have the Yazoo River, Mississippi, as I said. We have the Pearl River, Tombigbee River, I think is how you say that. So there's quite a lot of open waterways in Mississippi. Then you have the Delta region. Now that's kind of the southern, the west. I should say the river system's kind of on the western part of the state, and then you have the Delta region, which is actually not in the Gulf of Mexico. It's actually part of the northern part of the state. It's the Mississippi Delta. There's a lot of agriculture in that particular part of the state, and it's particularly flat. It's a delta. You have the upland and the hills. Again, that's going to be up in the north part of the state, but in the eastern part of the state. It's closer to the Appalachian Mountains and the Tennessee. It's known as the Tennessee Hills, apparently. They're not very tall mountains. They're between 200 and 800 feet, which is 60 to 240 meters above sea level. And then you have forest area. So there are quite a lot of forests. Half of the land area of the state is forests. And you can expect to see oak, hickory, pine, and being that there's quite a lot of rivers and natural areas, you have a lot of wildlife in the area as well. The climate is considered humid subtropical. Summers are hot and humid. Average temperatures go between the upper 80s and the low 90s in Fahrenheit, which is 30 to 35 Celsius, and miserable. I've never been to Mississippi. I have lived in places where it is hot and humid, and yeah, it's miserable. Winters are very mild compared to a lot of the other states. The temperatures are between 40s and 50 Fahrenheit, which is 5 to 15 degrees Celsius, and they rarely get snow. in Mississippi. So the northern regions, it's more common to have snowfall, but it's still fairly rare. In the spring and fall, the temperatures range between the 60s and 70s, which is 15 to 25 degrees Celsius. And being that it's right there on the Gulf of Mexico, their precipitation is quite high. They receive 50 to 60 inches of rainfall or other precipitation, which is 1,270 to 1,520 millimeters of precipitation. There's no real like dry area of the state. It pretty much gets watered. And then, of course, because it's there on the Gulf of Mexico, they have to deal with those tropical storms and hurricanes that come in from the Gulf of Mexico. All right, moving on to the industry that you can expect to find in Mississippi. As I said, agriculture was one of their main it's always been an agricultural state, but they have since branched out, brought in manufacturing, healthcare, and biotech, energy and natural resources. You have tourism and hospitality. All the states have the tourism and hospitality, education and research. So let's see. Some top manufacturers in the state. We have Nissan North America, Toyota Motor Manufacturing, Ingalls Shipbuilding, Viking Range Corporation. They do kitchen appliances, apparently. And Mississippi Steel Processing. For agriculture, let's see. Sanderson Farms, one of the largest poultry producers in the United States. Cal-Maine Foods. Apparently, they do eggs. So, yeah. Delta Pride Catfish. I'm not sure if this is Bunge or Bunge North America. They're part of a global agribusiness called Bunge Limited. They do a lot of food production. The Staple Cotton Cooperative, and that's just in the agriculture. In healthcare, the University of Mississippi Medical Center, St. Dominic's Hospital, Baptist Memorial Healthcare Center, and of course that University of Mississippi progenitor cell therapy. The Mississippi University of Mississippi Medical Center, that's going to be actually come back in the education and research section. We also have Cooperative Energy, Mississippi Power, Yates Company, Ergon, Mall Plus Woodlands Group, and that's in the energy and natural resources arena. Mississippi Oil and Gas Association, again, energy and natural resources. We'll come back to the tourism and hospitality in just a minute, but then we have the education research. As I said, University of Mississippi. It's also sometimes called Ole Miss, as in Old Mississippi. Mississippi State University, Jackson State University, Mississippi University for Women. It seems odd that we would have a university still that is gender segregated in the United States, especially when they're, right now. Okay, so that's what you can expect to find in Mississippi. In the tourism, there's a lot to do in Mississippi. Music is a big thing. Blues heritage is very strong in Mississippi, and it has earned itself the title birthplace of the blues. You can go to Clarksdale, Cleveland, Jackson, And there's blues museum, juke joints, live blues performance, Mississippi Blues Trail. It has, you go through and explore significant landmarks in the history of the blues. Natchez Trace there, and again, that's the music stuff. When we expand that into outdoor, they have driving, hiking, biking, camping, fishing. The Natchez Trace Parkway, it goes from Natchez, Mississippi to Nashville, Tennessee, and it goes through the different historic sites, recreation opportunities. Of course, we have the Civil War stuff for those people who are interested. Vicksburg National Military Park commemorates the Civil War Battle of Vicksburg, and you can go out to the battlefield, other historic markers. The USS Cairo Museum, it showcases Civil War a recovered Civil War gunboat, the USS Cairo. Interestingly enough, you can go to casinos in Mississippi. I was unaware of this until I was looking into what to do in Mississippi. I am very familiar with 3 places you can gamble in the United States. Obviously, you can gamble in Nevada. It's legal, and that's where Las Vegas is. So you're going to get a lot of stuff there. Then you have Atlantic City. Now, I know I'd have to look up where Atlantic City is. I believe it's in New Jersey. And then you have the Indian reservations. Some Indian reservations have casinos and allow gambling. Sorry about that. I had a catch in my throat. So it is something that you can do at the Indian reservations as well sometimes. But I was unaware that Mississippi also had casinos. Elvis. Now, if you are a fan of Elvis, you may know that Elvis had a he basically, when he got famous and made all of his money, he bought Graceland. That was his. Graceland is in Memphis, Tennessee, if I remember right. Let's see. Yes, Memphis, Tennessee. So that's where he kind of settled when he became famous and made all his money. He bought Graceland. Now, I was unaware of this, but Elvis Presley was actually born in Mississippi. He was born in Tupelo. There's a house and museum there that they made the house where he was born into a museum. And it has the place where they made the museum now has a chapel, memorial exhibits, and a park. So yeah. Some of the other destinations, as far as tourism goes, you have Natchez, as I said before, Biloxi and Gulfport, Vicksburg, Tupelo. There's an Oxford in Mississippi. It's the home of the University of Mississippi. And then you have Clarksdale, which is Crossroads of the Blues. A lot of the Delta Blues Museum, Ground Zero Blues Club, and it's a crossroad where Highway 61 and 49 intersected. So if you're interested in music and the blues, you may want to check out Clarksdale. All right, let's move on to my favorite part, the trivia. If you're familiar with a teddy bear, you may or may not know that the teddy bear was named after President Theodore Roosevelt, who was often called Teddy. And there's a whole story about there was a bear. He didn't kill it. Somebody sent him a stuffed animal bear called a Teddy's bear. And from there, everybody had to have a teddy bear or Teddy's bear, and it became the teddy bear. Well, it was in Onward, Mississippi, where this incident happened, where Roosevelt refused to shoot a bear cub, and so that's where the teddy bear eventually came from. Mississippi is the catfish capital of the world. Significant catfish farming industry goes there. Large portion of the United States farm raised catfish is there in Mississippi. Mississippi has the tallest Capitol building. It's located in Jackson, and it's the tallest state capitol building in the United States. It is 180 feet tall, including the lightning rod on the top, which is 55 meters. We talked about the Blues Highway. Highway 61 runs through Mississippi. We also mentioned Elvis. Not only was Elvis born in Mississippi, but apparently his first live performance, where he was paid, it was in Meridian, Mississippi, at the Mississippi Alabama Fair and Dairy Show on October 3rd, 1945. He was 10 years old at the time. Yeah. B.B. King. B.B. King is a renowned blues musician, pictured here. He was born in a log cabin on a cotton plantation in Itabana, Mississippi. And that cabin is now part of the B.B. King Museum and Delta Interpretive Center. So, yeah. If you go to Mississippi, you can find the largest rocking chair in the world. And you can also find the world's largest outhouse. If you're unfamiliar with outhouses, back in the day, you didn't have your toilet inside your house where you have flushing toilets and stuff. It was basically a little house that was situated far from everything, if they could make it so it didn't contaminate water or food or anything like that. It was just a little building, and now they have the world's largest outhouse there in Mississippi. Invisible hunters. So in 1973 in Belzoni, Mississippi, these hunters declared themselves invisible hunters of the Great Marsh. They claimed they killed these invisible creatures during their hunting expeditions. Yeah, most people just made fun of them. They have a gravity-defying house. The way the house is built, it's called Gravity House or Confederate House, and objects appear to roll uphill instead of rolling downhill. Yeah. Where did that one go? Here we go. In Natchez, it's illegal to sell ice cream on Sundays without a prescription from a physician. Nobody enforces it, but it's on the books. You could get in trouble for that. You cannot walk a camel on the highway in Mississippi. Who knows why? I mean, was it a problem? Did a lot of people walk their camels on the highway? You can wrestle bears in let me rephrase that. Okay, there's a law in Mississippi that forbids bear wrestling. I don't know why you would. I'll have to look at some of these things, some of these weird laws, because, and maybe make some videos on just the weird laws, because why would you need a law against bear wrestling? Was it really that much of a problem? Because when I was doing my research here, and I found that you can't wrestle bears. It's there's a specific mention of that as an activity that is not allowed, and the speculation is that it was to protect the welfare of animals and public safety. But really, why would you wrestle a bear? That seems really, really dumb. Anyway, if you are in the city of Biloxi, it is illegal for you to hold public office if you have a mustache or a beard, unless you have a special license. And with the beard, your beard has to be long. If your beard's longer than 4 inches, you have to have a special license. Seriously, what is with this? Back in the day, it was pretty common for people to have beards and mustaches. It was like fashionable. So was it that much of a problem that they're like, oh, we can't have these bearded people coming in here and taking our state jobs, our public officialship? I don't know. And then whale hunting. This is a state where this law actually makes sense. You can actually go whaling in the coastal waters that belong to the city or belong to the state of Mississippi. Now, while you can go whaling, you cannot do it on Sunday. Now, when I was looking this up, it says, whale hunting, it's not a coastal state, and so it lacks access to whale habitats. It's on the Gulf of Mexico. It is coastal. I don't know how many whales there are in the Gulf of Mexico, but I assume that there are some whales in the Gulf of Mexico. Anyway, this law actually freaking makes sense for this state. It's like, why on earth do so many landlocked states in the United States have anti-whaling laws? Makes no flippin' sense. Anyway, that's it for today. That's it for Mississippi for now. If you have questions, please leave them down below. Like, subscribe, comment, put the bell on so you get notifications, and have fun.